Airbnb ordinance that would allow us to capture the lodging tax from those homes that are now listing themselves on the Airbnb website. And we had identified that several homes here in town were in fact participating in that. It's an issue that for at least a year the state of Virginia had kind of said they were studying, and so a lot of localities really didn't do anything. And then when there seemed to be no activity at the state level, several jurisdictions started implementing Airbnb ordinances. My suggestion back when we last spoke about this was that we wait until we saw what the town of Blacksburg was doing. Since they are a town, in fact, by comparison, we know that the city of Alexandria, for example, has had this tax in place for a while now. The Blacksburg ordinance is the one that I shared with you all, and it is obviously a little bit different from the standpoint that they are a college town, and they have a concern that many of these homes would somehow be used, particularly by individuals who maybe bought the properties when their children were students, then rather than turning them into what would be called traditional rental property, renting them as an Airbnb. And candidly, if you have regular use, you could make significantly more than if you rented the house to a single occupant or a single family for any extended period of time. So I just wanted to kind of get some direction from you all as to what you thought the elements of a local ordinance should be. I don't think you ought to adopt this one in total by any means, but if you can give me some ideas of what you think the parameters would be, then we could get Dave Davis to start working on something.
You still got a copy of that one?
Mm-hmm.
What would the difference be between...
Yeah, man, Bob, won't that do?
I'm not, I'm talking. What would be the difference between what we have across the street, the Lantern, and a Airbnb? What's the difference? Is there a difference?
That's an actual business over there.
Yeah.
Okay, but when you rent something or sell something, doesn't that actually become... If you make a profit off of something, isn't that a business?
Well,
Or am I splitting hairs?
that's part of the reason why the state of Virginia really hasn't put something in place as a model ordinance on this. What has happened, and the Airbnb seem to be attracting a different perhaps audience than the traditional bed and breakfast or even the traditional hotel motel. But what has happened is because there's not a regulation of it, these homes can be rented for a night, 2 nights, 3 nights. You can rent your home for a month. We have a lot of landlords who are renting homes by the month. They're not paying us anything special except, in that case, the real estate tax on the property. The Airbnbs, when they are listed, can rent a room for a day, a week, a month, whatever, and people actually pay the website that then in turn sends the money to the owner of the property. And that's how today they're avoiding paying a lodging tax. If we were to implement an ordinance like this that would require these homes to meet certain requirements and to register their homes and then to pay that tax to us, it's still in effect an honor system, because they're still going to tell us, how many nights they rented at what rate to pay the 5% lodging tax. But right now, they're under no responsibility to do this. And in some communities, like Blacksburg, they've had a lot of homes turn into this kind of use and without any standards from the standpoint of noise, numbers of occupancy, that you restrict how many people per room or how many beds the way you would in another situation. They're saying that the host, meaning the owner of the property, shall not permit occupancy of a homestay unit for a period of less than 24 hours. So, there are some very specific requirements that you could put in place. The question is, how far do you want to go? I do know from talking to Johnette that they have a system in place where the renter and the rentee, if there's such a word, can make comment about their stay, and that if a renter finds that one of their rentees was not proper in their care of the home, they can make that comment, and then that comment is forwarded to the next time that individual asks to rent a unit or something. So they have a way of monitoring, which I thought sounded wonderful, because you remember when we were talking about rental inspection, how we tried to encourage the landlords to get together and have some kind of a system where they would let each other know about tenants and tenant history, and they said they really didn't have anything like that.
I tried that years ago, that same thing, and I had, well, the saddest thing is the greed factor comes into play. If I kick somebody out of the houses we had,
Somebody else would take them.
and they would go to one of these other owners and rent their house, and I would tell them, you don't want to do that. Well, I got an empty house, that's what I used to do. Well, then 3 months later, they've been hoodooed out of 2 months rent, and the house is tore to pieces, and it leaves them out there hanging. That's the way it works.
So
What does tax bank?
It's the same lodging
5%.
tax that would be for, so it'd be 5%, yeah, wouldn't
So-
be.
And we don't have to split this with,
Well, that would be up to you all to decide.
Well,